It's March Mania at Sports Interaction. NHL, NBA, March Madness, MLB, and so much more. Crazy odds and the best live in play. Download the app in Ontario. Use the QR code that you see at the bottom of your screen or head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 19 and over. Please play responsibly. One last thing before we get to Ask CJ. Are you paying attention at all to the NCAA men's hockey tournament? I believe it starts on Friday. We both live in markets where the teams we cover have a notable prospect who many are waiting on to sign entry-level contracts afterward. I have Matthew Coronado in Calgary, Matthew Knies in Toronto. I believe they're on opposite sides of the bracket for their respective universities. Just curious if you're paying attention to that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a cool time of year. Those games are great. Lots of entertainment in them. And then obviously there's players, every game you see with an elimination game, there's someone on the team that's losing that has NHL rights belonging somewhere. And there's at least the decision to sign. I mean, it's interesting. A couple of things can happen. You can see a player sign an entry-level deal that kicks in next season, and then they typically sign a pro tryout agreement to spend the rest of this year in the AHL. I think what'll be different about both Knies and Coronado is you'll see them sign an entry-level contract that begins this year. And because both of them are 20 years old or older than 19 in this case for the rule, the first year their contract gets burned right away. And that can have it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, this is what Johnny Gaudreau did back in the day too. He played, I think, one game at the end of the season and burned a year of his contract. But then you don't have rights to sign an offer sheet when you become an RFA after your first contract. So I mean, there's good and bad there. I think in the case of Knies, it's intriguing for the Maple Leafs because I think that there's a world that he plays playoff games this year. It's not a guarantee. And, I would say that, I asked actually Kyle Dubas a couple questions about Knies at the GM's meeting. Like, you get the feeling from the organization. They want to stop the hype train before it even begins. Like, I don't think that they're viewing him as needing to be an immediate solution. They want his focus to be with the University of Minnesota, one of the best teams in the country, have a chance to win a national championship, and then maybe play a couple of regular season games. That's the bonus, the icing on his cake after signing a contract. But if you look at the Leafs right now, they're not carrying an abundance of forwards. I think certainly, they just played a game on the weekend where their bottom two forwards were Bobby McMahon, who they called up from the AHL, and Wayne Simmons. I think you're comfortable slotting Knies ahead of those two. So even in a situation where Ryan O'Reilly gets healthy after his finger recovers from surgery, or Noel Acciari returns to the lineup, I think there's still room in their 12 for Knies. But it just depends on what he does. And what works in his favor, Julian, is he's a physical guy. He's in stature, he's big. And so, I don't think you have as much fear about him, just jumping into playing against men, how he's going to react. But I mean, none of us have a crystal ball to say how well he's going to perform in that environment. But I think what's intriguing is Toronto has left open one contract slot, and it fluctuates on a given day depending on who they've called up. But for argument's sake, they've left $925,000 available on their cap sheet, and they have an ability to sign him to a maximum $925,000 contract and use up that contract slot and put him into games, and then we'll see where he goes. As for Coronado, it does sound as though there's no reason to be concerned there in terms of his intentions. I think that, you're always nervous. I mean, if we had a Norris Trophy discussion right now, we might be talking about Adam Fox as being certainly among the favorites.
He still gets booed. He still gets booed here.
And he was drafted by Calgary. For those that aren't familiar, didn't sign with the Flames. He actually had his rights traded to Carolina, didn't sign with Carolina, and ultimately is a free agent coming out of college, signed with the Rangers, and he's won a Norris Trophy in 2021. He will probably be a finalist, I'm willing to say, in 2023, and potentially he's going to win. So I think that there's a sensitivity when you've seen a really good player go sign somewhere else that your organization's drafted, but I don't think that needs to be a case with Coronado. I would expect he'll sign. And, the real issue, honestly, is if his team ends up playing right till the end. I mean, it might be only a handful of games he can get into, but that being said, they could lose on Friday or Saturday this weekend, and then he could be a Calgary Flame by the time we're recording next Monday's episode.